Now, thank you everyone for joining. Today's session is going to be very super packed one. It's going to be very, very not so long. I think we're going to be finishing this up in just 45 minutes. And 45 minutes covers the Q&A so that we don't have to keep everyone here for too long. So I'm going to go straight into the slides so we can start picking them one after the other. So let me go straight to the slides. So while I'm on the slides, be sure that you can see my slides. If you can see the slides, just kindly indicate that you can see it so that I can be sure that whatever it is I'm sharing, everyone sees it and not just me. I guess everyone should be seeing it, but if you're not, kindly indicate if you're not. And if you're seeing it also, kindly indicate that you can see it so that I'm sure everyone can see it. All right, thank you. So I'm going to start. Since everyone can see it, I'm going to start. Now, the topic for today is scaling an application with feature flags. That's exactly what we're going to be discussing about today. And I'm going to believe that everyone who has joined this call, we are either software developers, we're either software engineers, web developers, mobile developers, database administrators, whatever it is you find yourself, whatever niche you find yourself, this talk is meant for you. So it's not just for everyone who is a software engineer or only for those who build applications using JavaScript or whatever language. As long as you find yourself in that niche where you build applications, be it mobile, be it desktop, whatever it is, this particular topic is for you. And this topic is one that most persons don't really talk about because it's not quite understanding. Like, not everyone can actually grab what it means to scale an application with feature flag. And that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, just a brief intro about myself. I'm a software engineer and a technical writer at ConfiCat. I've got over 5 years of experience building applications with several JavaScript technologies. So yeah, at least to a point, I would say I'm a JavaScript evangelist because I kind of work with JavaScript like very much. I build all the applications I build with JavaScript. I've got other experience on several other languages, but professionally, I work with JavaScript. I've got keen eye for user-friendly interface, seamless software architectures, and quality web platform. So that's just all about me in detail. Now, the section of this particular topic will be in 5 sections. The first one is going to be the introduction to feature flags, the strategic implementation, scaling challenges, the real world use cases, monitoring, and metrics. So we're going to be attending to each of these things one after the other. Each section is going to be coming after the completion of the first section. So we're going to be starting with the introduction to feature flags. Now, what exactly is feature flag? That word really seems to be, new to some persons. Most persons don't really know what feature flag is. It looks like it's a word that is not widely being used, but you might be surprised that you get to interface with it every day, but you really don't know it's called feature flag. So what exactly is feature flag? Now, feature flag, most persons know it as feature toggles. It just helps you to manage your application efficiently and also to have your application scale efficiently. And what does it do? It allows you to release features to different users. So, for example, in your application, you might have a particular feature that introduced a bug in your application. And with the help of feature flag, you don't have to rewrite all your code or have to bring down your server just to fix that particular issue and take your application back to the server. All you just have to do is, if you have feature flag implemented and integrated into your application, you just have to disable that particular feature that is causing the bug or that introduced a bug into your application. Now, that's a layman understanding of feature flags. But in the technical aspect, what exactly is feature flags? It allows you to release features gradually to segmented users. And when we mean segmented users, we mean different users. It enables and disables features on your application So, for example, you have an e-commerce application and you just created like a promo and a discount, like a Black Friday, and you notice that the Black Friday feature, caused some issues and introduced some bug in your application. All you need to do with feature flag is just disable that particular feature, and every other part of your application tends to work perfectly without having to break down the complete application. Another thing with feature flag is it modifies your application without you having to change any code. Now, and that's the beauty of it. You really don't need to go into making your hands dirty, having to write a whole lot of code just because you want to fix a particular bug or you want to remove a particular bug that is in your application. With the help of feature flag, all you just need to do is just turn off that particular feature or turn on that particular feature and you're good. Now, that's just the introductory aspect. Now, the second aspect, which is the strategic implementation. When we talk about strategic implementation, we're talking about the topic says scaling, the topic says feature flag. Now, we have these two keywords in our topic. When we talk about scaling first, scaling is just a process of having to make your application efficient. And that's one issue that most developers and most team suffer. There is this issue of being able to scale your application effectively. Now, when you build an application, at the initial development stage of you building an application, there are several things you need to consider for that application to scale effectively. Now, most developers really do not consider most of those things. And will we really say it's a developer fault, or are we going to say it's an organization fault? Now, the truth is, the fault revolves around everyone. Most persons just want to build applications without having to do and follow due process. Most companies really don't want you as a developer to follow due process. They just want you to release something very quick and, just want you to put it out there for people to use, not considering with this application scale on the long run or in the long run, if we have 100,000 users, we do are we going to is this going to introduce any form of bug on our application? Can our application actually cater for 100,000 users on the long run, or in the long run rather? If we have 1 million users, can our application cater for 1 million users? When you start to think about all these things, that's where scaling comes in. And trust me, scaling is very, very strenuous. It's not something that is so easy, but it's necessary. It's something that is compulsory in your application. And when we talk about scaling with feature flag, it's basically you having to add features, remove features, make your application efficient with the help of feature flag. And as I explained in the section one, feature flag basically allows you to enable and disable feature or roll out different features to segmented users. Now, when we talk about implementing feature flag in an application to ease scaling or to allow scalability, what exactly are we talking about? Now, the first implementation is a gradual or phased rollout. When we mean gradual or phased rollout, this is basically you understanding that as an organization, as a developer, when you are building an application, you should know that there are different stages and there are different features that needs to be released at different phase. And that's one issue most organization tends to have. There is no understanding that we cannot release all of these features at once. This could cause a break of transmission, a break in transmission in our application. This could make our server go down. So one strategic implementation to maintain optimum scalability is having to release your feature in graduals or in phase. So for example, if you are building an e-commerce application, you can release category whereby you can search for products in category. You can go ahead and release the next phase whereby you can search for product based on location. The next phase can become you being able to interface with an AI for the AI to easily search products for you. Those are the things that you need to understand. Now, The next thing is the A/B testing. When we talk about A/B testing, this is basically you being able to test your application. So when you have an application that is being developed, you should understand that an application should not be released without undergoing a test. And A/B testing is basically you having to test your application in two different stages, where, for example, you have user A, or will I say user group one, and you have group two. That way, you can be able to give this application to two different groups, have to test two different features, and you can be able to get feedback from these two different groups to know which exact part of your feature or which exact part of your application is doing well and gathering the best feedback. For example, you could develop an application whereby you are searching for products based on location and also searching for product based on category, and you want to know which one of them is doing better in terms of user experience. All you need to do is just introduce an A/B testing phase whereby people can be able to test, different people or different groups can be able to test for these features, and that way you can be able to get feedback from which of the feature is doing well. Now the next one is personalized user experience. Personalized user experience is basically, just like the name implies, it's a process whereby you can be able to understand your users. And understanding your users is basically you being able to know that, okay, I'm building an application and this is what my users would want. And how can you get to that stage whereby you scale your application to build exactly what your users would want? That is where you need to build features and release those features for users to test. And it might not necessarily be your full users. It necessarily might not be your real users. It could be a group of persons that are churned out of your user base just for them to have a feel of the application. And feature flag allows you to achieve this. Now, another thing that feature flag allows you to do when scaling, one of the implementation is managing technical debt. This is something that most companies tend to suffer. Now, when you build applications, you find out that at some point you have this issue of, you have there's this thing we call obsolete code, whereby there are several things that are, will I say, no longer in use. As a developer, you go to a company or you join a company, there is this issue of you having to interface with legacy code bases, and you see different kind of codes that is no longer in use. How do you manage them? Because they cause issues when you're building applications and when you're scaling. For example, you might have joined a company that maybe they don't they were using a particular feature before, and for one reason or the other, they ditched that particular feature. Now, how do you manage all of this? How do you manage all of this? The way you manage all of this is when you implement with feature flag, it allows you to manage technical debt. And the best thing and the beautiful thing about feature flag is there is this interface whereby you can be able to enable a particular thing. If you're no longer using that particular feature, you can just disable that feature and you don't have to, start to rewrite a lot of code just to remove that feature from your application. Let's take a real life example. You have an application that was allowing users to, for example, you have an e-commerce application that was allowing users to search for product based on location, just like I explained earlier. And you find out that that particular feature is not giving you the result you want. And you built a different feature that allows users to interface with an AI chat, tell the AI chat, I want to buy this, I want to do this, how can I do this, where can I get this? And you find out that that particular feature is giving you the results, the revenue that you want as a company, as an organization. And you feel like there is no need having to keep the other feature, which is searching by location. With feature flag, all you need to do is just go to the dashboard, disable that feature, and your application keeps running. You don't have to go get your hands dirty to start going into your code, messing things around, trying to remove the feature. And in the process of removing the feature, you tend to put like a dent on other things that are working fine. And before you know it, you have like a whole lot of applications that are having issues. Now, one more strategic implementation is reduce risk of deployment. Now, this is one that a lot of persons really need to know, that when you work with feature flag, your application has what we call an optimum scalability when there's a reduced risk of deployment. I can attest to this, that I, as a developer, there are several and thousands and hundreds of times that I've deployed a feature, and just because of the feature I deployed, it breaks everything in that particular application. Like, once you put that feature online or once you put it on live, you just find out that other things just stop to work. You just find out that that particular feature has broken a lot of things. And that's because you've been putting, removing, adding, subtracting. But with feature flag, you don't need to do all of those back and forth. All you just have to do is just disable that feature, and every other thing in your application works the exact way it's supposed to work. Now, those are the strategic implementation of feature flags when it comes to scaling. Now, I'm going to take a break here just to also welcome back some other persons who joined when we were still in the when we already started. Now, I said earlier, if you have questions based on what we've been saying or what I've been explaining, all you just need to do is just drop the questions in the Q&A, and I'm going to do justice to answering the questions once it's time to answer those questions. So if you're just joining us, or if you joined while I was explaining, welcome to this particular section. It's a very quick one. It's a very catchy one. It's one that, I trust me, you're going to learn a lot when it comes to scaling your applications. And so far, I've been able to introduce feature flag, talked about the strategic implementation, and right now we're going into the scaling challenges. Now, if you remember, I said earlier, scaling your application is actually difficult. Let no one tell you scaling is easy. Let no one tell you scaling is interesting. Let no one tell you scaling is fun. Yeah, it might be fun because it's the passion of, as a software engineer, as a developer, you build applications, you see how it works. It's fun, trust me. But in real sense, in reality, scaling is actually very stressful. But it's necessary, because if you work for top organizations, you can't just ship a product that doesn't make sense. You can't just ship a product that will cost company more money and less revenue. Trust me, no company wants you to work for them and cost them to spend more money in having to manage their application. And at the end of the day, they are bringing in less revenue that cannot even match what is being taken out. And that's one challenges of scaling. Scaling is very difficult. And there are several challenges that can come up when it comes to scaling. One of them is performance impact. And when we talk about performance impact, there is this issue of, as your application tends to grow, it tells on the performance and how that application tends to react to those new features that are added. Now, I'm going to use myself as an example. I've been opportunity to work for several companies that have been able to have hundreds of users, hundred thousands of users, thousands of users, and all of that. And I can attest to the fact that the more users you have in your application, the more activity your application tends to undergo. If an application has 2 users, that application might work 100% fine, no issues. Once the application grows to 20 users, you might still have no issues. But by the time you start hitting 100 users, 1,000 users, 10,000 users, 1 million users, you begin to see the performance impact on your application. And that's one issue with scaling. An application that is not well scaled would always have a performance impact. Now, one other one is the technical depth. Like the name implies, you would incur a lot of technical depth. And what do we actually mean by technical depth? Do we mean owing technically? That's not what we mean. What we mean by technical depth is, you are in this situation whereby you begin to spend and owe a lot of things. Now, owing necessarily doesn't mean money. Owing can be performance. Owing can be you not being able to bring in or introduce this feature because you have to trade it off for this. That is what technical debt is. Now, you are in this dilemma whereby your application is growing or your application is in this phase whereby more users are coming in, more activities is going on. You are now faced with, what do I need to do technically? Do I need to introduce a kind of um, load balancer whereby I can be able to spread requests to several of my multi containers on Azure, on AWS? Do I need to horizontally scale my application or vertically scale my application? All of these things begin to come in. And that's where technical debt is. Now, one other challenges of scaling is testing complexity. And this one is something that a lot of developers can attest to the fact that you would always undergo testing complexity. If an application just have two features, the test cases that you would have to write would be very minimal compared to an applications that have hundreds of features. Let's use, for example, if I'm building a new application, I don't need to write so much of a test because my features might just be like, let's say, two, three features in the application, and I'm good. If I'm building or maintaining an application like Facebook or AWS services, if I work in that kind of company and I maintain those kind of application, having to test those applications will become very, very complex and cumbersome because there are a lot of things that you need to put into consideration. Now you're talking about you having hundreds of features in your application all at once. So you can see that when you try to scale, one of the challenges you would face is the complexity that revolves behind testing your application. Now, one more thing is concurrency issues. As the name implies, there's this issue of handling multiple requests simultaneously. And this one is pretty straightforward. I'm a user of my application and I have 100 more users. At the time I'm making payments, 10 more persons are also making payments. At the time I'm trying to sign up an account or register an account, 500 more persons are also registering an account. And everybody needs a successful response. Trust me, I don't want to register an account and you tell me unable to register. I'll get pissed off. I don't want to try to make payments and you tell me payments declined for no reason when I know I have funds in my account. Now, all of these issues tends to come up when your application tries to scale. There's this issue of you being able to handle multiple requests simultaneously. Now, take for example, let's use Walmart as an example. In Walmart records thousands of sales every day. Now, we're in a season where a lot of persons are shopping for Black Friday, we're buying stuffs cheaper and all of those things. Now, imagine an application like Walmart whereby hundreds of thousands of persons are trying to pay for the same product. Let me use something as an example. Let's take for example, I purchased a new laptop during the Black Friday. There are thousands of persons that might also want to purchase that same laptop on Black Friday. And we all need to pay on that same platform called Walmart. That is where scaling challenges comes in. How do you handle that kind of issues? That's one issue that you would always face when you try to scale your application. Now, one of them is monitoring and debugging, which is the last one we're going to be discussing about. This is something that you cannot run away from. You would always have issues with you having to fix something. You always have to debug something because trust me, no application is perfect. There are several occasions where Stack Overflow has gone down. There are several occasions where Google has gone down. There are several occasions where Facebook has gone down. Now, this is to tell you that nobody is above challenges that come with having to scale your application. But where you begin to manage it effectively is how often does your application break? Because trust me, if I'm a user of your application, I wouldn't want to come on a Monday, your application is down. I'm coming on a Wednesday afternoon, the same application is down. I'm coming on a Friday morning, the same application is down. It gives me this level of insecurity, like what exactly is going on. Imagine if it's an application that has to do with payments, wallet, finance. You begin to lose customers because there's a trust issue. You know, nobody wants to come and visit your application and you tell them, sorry, we are working on it, we'll get back to you. Or you tell them error 404, or you give them some jargons that comes with error management. Nobody wants to see that. No user wants to see that. And that's the truth. And trust me, when you try to scale your application, you cannot bypass having to debug. You would always have to debug, and you would always have to do a lot of monitoring. Now, monitoring or monitoring, as some persons might call it, is something that most persons don't really consider. But trust me, you really have to consider monitoring your application because you need to be able to track errors. Where is my errors coming from? Is it coming from a particular feature? Is it coming from sign up? Is it coming from login? Is it coming from payments? Is it coming from post? Is it coming from feed? All of these things are something you always would want to track when it comes to monitoring. And like I said, debugging, you would always have to fix one issue or the other that would arise. Now, scaling is strenuous. Like I said, let no one fool you, but it's necessary. And why is it necessary? Because the end goal of every business is to have something that users would always be ready to use. You know, there's this joy of you knowing that my application can stand the test of time. There's this joy that comes from a business perspective whereby you are having a good sleep and you know that whatever I have that is online is perfectly working. Now, but like I said, nobody's above scaling challenges. A lot of things that can come up. Your application could be working fine, and just because you added a new feature, you draw in the attention of more people, and your application begins to break at some point or the other. So no one is above scaling challenges. Don't have this inferiority complex or imposter syndrome that I'm not really so good at what I do because I work in a place where we are always fixing bug. Every organization fix bug. Every organization fix issues. You just might not know out there. But the end goal is how scalable is the application. And that's one thing you need to consider from the very start. When you consider a very good architecture from the start, you would have less issues when it comes to scaling your application. Now, the fourth section, I think that's the second to the last section, is the real world use cases. And I'm going to give you two use cases that is practical, that is real life. And these two use cases are based on what I've experienced in person. I've been opportune and privileged to work with several companies, and I've understood to a point what scaling is. I've understood to a point how to improve an application and scale an application effectively. And that's why the topic today talks about scaling with feature flag. Feature flag is something that would always help you scale your application effectively. Now, what's a real world use case of scaling with feature flag? Let's take the first example. You have a social media platform and you want to introduce a new user interface design. Now, for you to introduce this kind of application, for this kind of feature in your application, with feature flag, all you just need to do is you can decide that, okay, I have two different designs. I really want to know which design my users would love more. Now, you have a total of 10,000 users. With feature flag, you can be able to display the first design to 5,000 users and the second design to the next 5,000 users. And all you need to do is from the back end of your feature flag, from the monitoring system, you can be able to know which part of the design your users interface with more. Which part of the design does the users love more? That way, it allows you to know that, okay, moving forward, we're going to be working with design A because it's bringing in more activities to the platform, or we're going to be working with design B because our users love design B and it's bringing in more revenue to the platform. Now, this is an example of you being able to scale your application effectively using feature flag. If you want to do this by yourself, or you want to do this without feature flag, it's going to be very, very messy because how do you split your users? That's the first question. How do you tend to distribute this feature between these users? That's the next question. And before you know it, you are introduced into a box whereby because you brought out a new feature, your application begins to break. But with the help of feature flag, all you just need to do is diversify this device to different users, have their feedback based on these particular designs. And that way you can know, okay, we're going to be moving forward with design B based on the response and feedback from our users. And that way your application is very easy to scale. Now, one more use case is a mobile app developer that wants to introduce a new feature such as in-app messaging. Now, you must have used several mobile devices whereby, or mobile applications whereby you can be able to chat maybe a customer or a customer representative or a fellow user within the application. Now, let's imagine you have an e-commerce application and you are introducing a new feature whereby you want a customer to be able to chat up a driver who is bringing his or her product to his house or her house. You want it in a very easy way whereby you can just go to the platform and say, "Hi, Williams, where exactly are you?" Or "This is where I want you to meet me," or "This is what I want." You can easily reach out to the person via the platform. Now, in order for you to bring in that kind of platform and allow your application not to have issues, you would have to do that via feature flag, because that way it just releases that particular feature to a segmented set of users. And based on the feedback gotten from those users, you can easily tell that, okay, my users might actually like this, or I don't really like the receptiveness and the reception that I got from this particular feature. I don't want to release this to my users. And you can just disable it. So the end goal is, how can you introduce more features? How can you advance your application without having to always go into writing the code, without having to always redeploy, without having to always go and fix bugs. And that's where feature flag comes in. It's just a button, off, on. When you off a feature, it turns off. When you on a feature, it turns on. That's how feature flag works. All you just need to do is integrate feature flag behind the scene. Now, I know there might be this question coming up in your head that what exactly is the feature flag? How do we even get started with feature flag? There is a tool and there are different softwares that you can actually use to integrate feature flag within your application. And that's what section 5 does for you. Now, let's talk about monitoring and metrics first. Monitoring and metrics plays a crucial role in ensuring the success of scaling an application with feature flag. And that's actually very true. When you monitor your application with feature flag, you don't really need to do much. You know, if you have a feature flag tool, yeah, it can give you the performance metrics, can tell you, okay, this is how much your application tends to do. Every 5 a.m., you normally have 100 users signing up into their accounts. There's always an error on your login. There is always a delay in response time when users try to fetch products. With feature flag, you can be able to tell where your application is lacking and where your application is doing well. So, for example, you could have an application whereby there's an issue with payment, and you might not know that there's an issue with payment. Imagine your users being the one to tell you or send you a mail and tell you, "Oh, I tried paying and I couldn't pay because of this." It sounds very embarrassing. But with feature flag, you don't need to wait for your users to complain and tell you, "Oh, we tried doing this thing on your application and it didn't work." Feature flag automatically allows you know that, okay, at this point in time, your payment is breaking down. There's an error on the payment. There is a slow response time when you try to fetch products. There is a fast response time when users are logging in. All of those things are something that feature flag will allow you to do. Now, if you want issues in your application, for example, you want to track errors on a particular feature, feature flag allows you to do that, because all you need to do is just go into your dashboard and you can see for yourself that, okay, in my application, there is an error or there is an increased error when users try to upload their profile picture. And that automatically, tells you that okay, there is an issue with profile picture upload. Now you can see how easy it is. Instead of you having to be the person to pull out your code, start going deeper and digging dirty, trying to find where the issue is, feature flag streamlines and gives you like an idea that this is exactly where the issue is in your application. And how do you do that? Is via the monitoring tools. Now, one of the metrics and monitoring advantage is the experimentation metrics. And this is just to measure the impact of different features on user behavior. I've explained this several times, why we initially started the topic. I said if you have a particular feature of two different types, I gave an example of a UI design, like you're trying to design, you design something new and you design two different designs. You want to see which one your users tend to like better. With feature flag, you can easily know and tell that, okay, I've released these features to two equal group of users, 5,000 users on A, 5,000 users on B. And for the first design, in 5,000 users of A, I only got two persons who loved the design and 4,900 and whatever, disliked the design. And for design B, everyone seems to like the design. So that gives you an insight that okay, moving forward, my application would be using design B because generally most of your users tends to love and relate very well with user B. And that's where A/B testing comes in. That's where you are able to share your applications to two different test groups. Not necessarily two, it could be four users and four groups, it could be five groups, it all depends. But like the name implies, A/B testing is basically you sharing your feature to different groups and getting the feedback based on those group, how they relate to those particular features which you've shared with them. Now, this is like the parent process of how can you bring in feature flag. Now we've talked about scaling, scaling, scaling. We've talked about easy way to add features to your application and remove features to your application. How do I start? I've been opportune to work with an amazing company called ComfyCat, and I still do work with ComfyCat. And that's what we build. We build feature flag for teams. And what exactly do we do? Our application is an application that you can integrate into your application. And you can see for yourself that Microsoft is integrated, NASDAQ is integrated, Rakuten is integrated, a lot of top companies are integrated. That's to tell you that it really helps them to scale because at the end of the day, the end product is everybody wants a perfectly working application. Everyone wants something that will scale effectively. Everybody wants to reduce costs. That's the end goal. Nobody wants to spend so much money and get half of that money in return. Either we want to spend 10% and get 200% in return. That's what we want to do. And that's where ComfyCat comes in. Now, what exactly does ComfyCat do? It's a tool that eases your stress of scaling with feature flag. All you need to do is integrate ComfyCat through the link comfycat.com into your application. ComfyCat automatically detects all the features you have in your application, and any feature that is not doing well, all you just need to do is turn off the feature without having to write any code. How amazing can that be? Like, trust me, it's very amazing because that way it doesn't really put you in a box. It doesn't. You don't need to wake up at midnight, to try to fix bugs. You don't need to do too much. If that particular feature is breaking for a reason, if for example you had two payment integration and you integrated the third payment, let's assume you have Stripe, you have Paystack, you have PayPal, and for some reasons Stripe begins to misbehave, causing your users to have issues with their payments. All you just need to do is go into your ComfyCat dashboard, disable your implementation for Stripe, and Stripe implementation automatically stops working. Every other thing in your application continues to work. How beautiful can that be? Trust me, like it eases your stress. So you go head over to ComfyCat, check out how to use ConfigCat. We've got a very amazing documentation. It gives you a very straightforward approach of how to implement feature flag. And the end goal is being able to scale your application effectively. That's where ConfigCat comes in. There are several other ones that you can use, but trust me, not necessarily because I work there, but it's something that we build that I know is very amazing and it's going to really help you when it comes to scaling and implementing feature flags. And I would love you to give it a shot because it eases your stress as a developer, eases your stress as a team, not just being a developer, and makes you scale efficiently. Now, the conclusion is feature flags enable agile and controlled development. Trust me, it does. Scaling introduces challenges. I said that several times. As long as you have it at the back of your mind that you want to scale your application, be ready for some sleepless nights. But how do you reduce those sleepless nights? Feature flag. Strategic implementation is key. From the initial start of your application, have one thing at the back of your mind. Always make sure you work with the best architecture from the initial start. Don't get carried away with the fact that, oh, we don't have users for now, we just test. Let's just keep playing around. No, always have it at the back of your mind that this application might grow to having 10,000 users, 100,000 users, 1 million users, 7 million users. Will what I am doing, will it scale? Will it continue to work? Will it always break? The last one is the continuous improvement. Trust me, continuous improvement of your application is fundamental. You would always have to improve your application. Whatever you build on December would not be what you would use till the end of that application. There should always be room for continuous improvement. And that brings us to the end of my own part of the talk. That is the conclusion. Like I said, if you've got questions, you can start dropping the questions so that we can attend to them one after the other. I hope I've been able to touch several parts that I feel, it's not really been explained so well by a lot of engineers. And yeah, trust me, like I actually love the topic. Yeah, I do. Because I feel like it's something that a lot of persons really need to understand. Don't just go about writing codes. Keep writing codes. Writing code is fun, but are you writing codes that will bring money for your company? Are you writing codes that will be efficient? Writing codes and building projects. That's not the end goal. The end goal is that is efficient. End goal of whatever. I love to write code, but my end goal would always be whatever I'm writing, can it be something that a lot of persons would use and there wouldn't be any issues? That's where you differentiate a good engineer from a bad engineer. Now, thank you so much for listening. Trust me, I loved this session. Maybe because it was something I've always been willing to speak about, but I feel it's something everyone should enjoy. If you love what you've had, you can follow me on my socials, my LinkedIn, my GitHub. My GitHub is basically just where I just post, demo projects and demo stuff that I work on open source and that I feel a lot of persons should have. So you can go head over there. You will see some amazing stuff, but most of them will be JavaScript, trust me. And my LinkedIn is basically as professional as it used to be. Just come there to drop my 2 3 cents about software engineering and design principles. You can follow me on Twitter also. My Twitter is also a bit more professional too, because I just come there to also drop 2 cents, 3 cents about software engineering principles. My YouTube is also an amazing place you would always want to be. I drop weekly videos about several software engineering principles, software engineering roadmaps, several stuff. So every week, you would always get one video uploaded. So you can go there, you would find several kind of resources that you would want to work with as a software engineer. That brings me to the end of this particular topic. It's been an amazing time here. So now we're going to look at the we're going to take the questions if there are any. So let me see if we've got any questions. Um, okay, so someone says, please, can you explain what is technical debt? Is that the question? Let me see. It says, can you explain what is technical debt? Okay, yes, I can explain what technical debt is. So, technical debt basically is, there is this, let me put it in a layman's way just for you to understand. So, technical debt, also known as code debt, it describes the results that people tends to face when you are building an application. There is this issue of having to write several things, and you are in a position whereby this particular application or this particular feature you've built, it's no longer in use. And you've imagine, okay, let's put it this way. Imagine having to build an application, and you introduce two, three different new features, and for some reason you had to purchase and introduce more load balancers to spread your applications or to spread your requests simultaneously and equally to several of your services. And for some reasons that particular feature is no longer in use. Now it costs you more money, and the returns from that particular feature is no longer needed. That's where technical debt comes in. And one way for you to manage most of these things is feature flag allows you to, you know, before you release your application to thousands of users, several users, you have an understanding and insight that, okay, whatever I'm releasing is something that my users like. And I gave an example. You could be building a movie application, you know, and your users might, for no, by one reason or the other, they might not want to search for movie by themselves. You know, they might just want to come to your application and just see an AI tell them, what do you want to watch today? And they just reply, oh, I want to watch something adventurous. Okay, we've got some adventurous movies, and they start to list the movie for them, without them having to type by themselves of I want to watch or start searching for a movie. Do you understand? That way, if you release that feature beforehand to several kind of users, you can be able to get a feedback that okay, this is what my users want. And by the time it's being implemented or being brought into the application, there is this assurance that whatever we're releasing out there is something that would 100% be used by our users. Now, that's that. So the next question says, when do you consider a feature flag to be complete so as to completely drop it? If I understand your question very well, you mean when do you consider a feature flag to be complete? So let me put it this way, and I want to be sure that I'm answering it correctly. Now, when you implement or when you integrate feature flag into your application, the feature is there. All you need to do is, okay, let me see. Okay, that's another different question. Let me attend to the first question, which is Chiwike's question. I thought that was a continuation. So when do you consider a feature flag to be complete? Now, when you integrate feature flag to your application, what you should have at the back of your mind is it's like a switch. Is that feature doing well? You leave it on. Is the feature, for one reason or the other, breaking, having issues? Users are complaining that this thing is not working. You don't have to bring down your application. Do you understand? You don't have to go get your hands too dirty. All you need to do first to keep your application continually running without every other thing not having issues is just to turn it off. Do you understand? So it keeps your application always live. Like everybody knows that this application is working, but behind the scene, you know what is bad and what is good. So you know what is working and what is not working. So that way it becomes very easy. So when something breaks, your application doesn't break. Just that thing alone breaks. So that's that. I think I answered that question very well. Um, yeah, it can be turned on forever. Trust me, it can be turned on forever. There is no start date and end date for a particular feature being turned on. So Steven said, if I understand this accurately, I'm describing implementing a feature flag into an application to drive releasing features that have been planned and architected from the get-go. Yes, 90% yes. And this is why I said 90% yes. Now, you already know that this feature I'm releasing out there, has been spoken about. Like, let's assume we're a team. We want to release this feature. We love this feature. But we don't just want to put it there for users to see. Because one thing about features in application is not everything you release that your users would like. They might bash it, for one reason or the other, they might not love it. So in order not to incur so much cost on yourself as a company, the application has been built, the new feature has been introduced. Now, how do you know if this feature is something that users love, users like? Release it to segmented users, get feedback from the users. It gives you a better understanding that, okay, my users love this thing, will love this thing, will like this thing. Then release it continuously, like overall to everybody. Now, on the long run, for one reason or the other, that particular feature had an issue. I don't need to remove all my application from the internet, from the cloud. All I need to do is just disable that particular feature. Every other thing in my application continues to work perfectly, while behind the scene we fix that. And once it's fixed, you don't need to redeploy. All you just need to do is feature flag, or the tool that you use automatically takes the updates, and all you need to do is just turn on back the switch. Sorry, I'm calling it switch because it's just a toggle off and on. So that's basically that. Let me see if there's any other question here. Okay, I think there are no other question. So yeah, if there are no other question, thank you all for joining. It's been an amazing session. So it says, gotcha, it will be interesting to see a diagram showing an example of how you've done this. I understand controlling the release of modules, but I'd like to see how you've done this. Okay, yeah, Steven. So the reason why this particular talk was broken down is because there are two parts of the talk: the introduction, which is basically the explanation, and the practical approach. So I am promising you that if you're going to be keeping up with the newsletter on Codementor, you definitely will be getting a version 2 in coming weeks about a practical implementation of how to use feature flag. I owe you guys that. And trust me, the reason why that was not considered here is because it makes no sense, going ahead to implement something when people don't have an understanding of what we're implementing. Thank you. So I promise you guys there would be a practical approach. And I feel the reason why the practical approach has to come second is because by then everybody has an understanding of what exactly we are trying to do. So yeah, there would be a practical approach. So yeah, that's that. So thank you guys for joining. I really do appreciate. For those who couldn't keep up with the the talk or what I've been saying, the recording would be available in coming days. So you can just go to the recording and check whatever it is you want to check. My email would also be attached to the recording. So if you have any issues, just send me an email and we can get over a call to trash things out. I'm also a mentor on Codementor. I'm opportune to be a mentor. I'm privileged to be a mentor. So if you have any issues with development in your organization, you can reach out to me and we can get on a call, and I can give you the best of my knowledge on the call. So thank you for having me, and thank you guys for joining. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.